Well, hello, and welcome to the AzureWell podcast, where we're finding ways to restore balance naturally so you can live healthy again. And today, our subject is to talk about cod liver oil. And with me, joining me, is Todd Parker and Dr. Alfonso Monzo. So, Todd Parker is an expert at all things fish liver oil, fish oil. He's got 30 years plus experience in that and specifically in omega-3 research. So, Todd, thank you for joining us.
What a pleasure.
And Dr. Alfonso Manzo, he is a biblical naturopathic doctor with an emphasis on biophysics, and he's a regular guest on our podcast here. Glad to have you join me to um, talk to Todd more about cod liver oil specifically.
Yeah, thank you. Looking really forward to it.
Yeah. So I kind of have two goals for this. The first goal is I would like everyone to understand why should they even take cod liver oil? What is cod liver oil? What's it good for? Why is this important? And the second thing I want to accomplish here is, well, why should a person choose AzureWell brand? What is it that is different or better or superior about ours? And so I think between the two of you, you're going to be able to help answer both of those questions. So maybe, Todd, maybe we can start with you and you can first tell us what cod liver oil is and where it comes from.
Sure. Cod liver oil, as the name implies, is predominantly the lipids that come from the liver of cod species. Gaddis, your oil is from Alaska. It's very unique. And the fish is called Gaddis macrocephalus, which means big-headed cod. We're going to talk in this discussion, we're going to talk about other nutritional factors that really will help people that are in the cod liver oil. But for now, it's predominantly the fats that are in there. Now, cod liver oil, a lot of people don't know this. We know that it goes back to our grandparents, but it actually goes far, hundreds of years. And the Baltic Sea is one of the most traded materials in the Baltic and Europe. And they used it for basically for medicine. They would apply it to wounds, and they saw that, wow, it had an extraordinary effect on wound healing. And then fast forward a little bit, and we saw that they were seeing some of the great health benefits that were derived from the vitamin A content of it. And then they found out that it was also good at preventing rickets because of the vitamin D. And then now we know there's other really highly active compounds in the cod liver oil. So why people should take is that it is like a nature-made medicine that will benefit everybody in a multitude of ways. And hopefully we'll be able to go into some of those health benefits. But for me, why your material is so phenomenal is you're selling basically almost the only cod liver oil that actually comes from Alaska. And in Alaska, the Bering Sea, you've got very robust stock of these fish. So it's environmentally the right way to go. You have very clean waters. You have a process where all the active compounds are captured and maintained. And you have very robust levels of the fat-soluble vitamins. People are aware of vitamin D. I've heard many experts believe the two biggest deficiencies on the planet are omega-3 and vitamin D. And in your cod liver oil product, you're getting both of those and more in a very, very clean, healthy material.
And Dr. Monzo spends quite a bit of time talking about the benefits that cod liver oil has on ceruloplasmin and overall health.
Yeah. So, and actually, before I get there, I actually had a question then for Todd about he was talking about the rickets. I don't know if he knows this question or not, or if research has been done. Is there any indication that it's the vitamin D by itself that helps with rickets, or was it the vitamin D that was working in conjunction with the retinol and the other factors? Or do we know?
Well, that's a great question. And I probably should have been a little bit more specific. As you and I have discussed, and with Susan many times, vitamin D and vitamin A require each other to work effectively in our bodies. So without one, you're really not going to get the full effect of the activity of the other. So in a material like your Alaskan wild caught cod liver oil, you're getting probably the highest food levels. I call your product a food because, quite frankly, it just is. But you're getting the highest levels of naturally formed vitamin D and naturally formed vitamin A, and they work together in synergistic ways, self-supporting, mutually supporting ways. They work on various pathways together. Without one, you don't have the other. So most certainly any beneficial effect that you would get from basically either one of those vitamins, they kind of also have their own pathways and their own effects in the body, but they're very dependent. They're a dynamic duo in a sense, and you need both of them.
I was just wondering about that because I thought I read somewhere before where they were saying that they thought the retinol had played a role in it as well, and it wasn't just the D by itself, but I can't remember where I read it.
Mhm.
But yeah, the uh, one of the things I love about the cod liver oil is the fact that not only does it have the healthy fats, as Todd was talking about, but and he also mentioned the retinol, the vitamin A. So vitamin A from usually animal sources called retinol, and then you have the D, and these are really important. And the retinol specifically is really important when you want to understand the copper iron metabolism. And we've done a lot of shows on that and the ceruloplasmin. But this is one of the things we always bring up that you need that. The other thing I like to mention in our podcast is we talk a lot about uh, vitamin mineral deficiencies and the essential nutrients to the body. And we know there's at least 90 essential nutrients, which means nutrients your body needs but cannot make. So you need to get it from food. And three of those are essential fatty acids. And so you need essential fatty acids. But the problem is, if you're not really getting it just from diet, and probably diet's not enough, where are you going to get it? Most of the time, you're not going to find a whole food multi that has the fatty acids in there because you have a problem with rancidity. So a lot of times they don't throw those in there, at least not a whole food form of supplement. You might find something synthetic that you get at the store, like at Walmart, that probably has almost no nutritional value because there's nothing real about it. But you have to have those essential fatty acids. So this is something where you can take the whole food multi and combine it then with cod liver oil, and now you're starting to bring in all the essential vitamins, minerals, and fatty acids. So that's very important.
Hmm. So Todd, you know, you've done research on the actual Alaskan cod liver oil that we're selling. What makes it different from something else you might get somewhere else? Ours, I know it tastes good. Um, it doesn't taste rancid. And so what makes a good cod liver oil? What do you have to start with in order to end with something that's good to eat?
Sure. I guess I would start at that you need clean water that the fish live in,
Hmm.
and you need an abundant stock of fish because if the stock is on the verge of collapse, you don't want to be overfishing that. So you want clean water, and then from there it's just the process, and the process is to keep the oil good. So with your oil, it's caught up in the Bering Sea, and on the boats when they process the fish, as soon as they come on board the boat, the livers are taken out and they're flash frozen. And this prevents oxidation and enzymatic breakdown and processes that later on will require more processing. And the more you have to process a material like this, the more you lose these essential nutrients that are so incredibly healthy for us. So your material, essentially what nature made in the liver is what you're getting in the soft gel, less the protein and less the water, but you're getting everything else, all the fats and the fat soluble vitamins and some other really fascinating compounds that are wonderful for human health. If you traditionally, most of the cod liver oils come from the Atlantic, maybe up around Iceland and that the Barents Sea. Um, those fisheries aren't quite as sophisticated. They don't necessarily handle the fish as well. So the fish, are kind of starting to age by the time they get them into the facility. There can be a long gap in the time between the oil's rendered and then it's cleaned up and everything. And the downside of that is it can affect the fatty acid levels a little bit, but the necessary processing that has to go into those oils will
Mm.
strip out, for example, your vitamin A and your vitamin D, which really are some of the things that make the cod liver oil so special. And then they put synthetic material back in. And if you've been listening to Dr. Monzo for a long time, you'll know, and Susan, that the body, nature recognizes nature, and nature doesn't recognize synthetic nearly as well. So your material being clean, sustainably sourced, and having these incredible nutritional factors that are so powerful in helping support people's optimal immune activity, cardiovascular health, eye health, brain health. I could go on and on. A new study just came out. They did it on 7,000 people, and they found that omega-3, vitamin D, had a significant reduction in in biological aging, and they looked at things like epigenetic markers, which are things inside of our genome, and telomerase. Telomeres are the structures in the end of genes that the more robust they are, the lower your biological age. And then they threw in one more thing, which was exercise, and it had a very, very significant impact. And I just bring these up to say to highlight that the nutrients that are in this cod liver oil, this is beyond fish oil. This is beyond omega-3. You've got really, really powerful nutrients in your product at high, safe, clean levels.
Mhm.
Can
So
I
you
piggyback
essentially
off of that
said,
for a second and ask another
oh,
question?
yeah.
So in this industry, there's a lot of, you could say marketing, and there's a lot of people who rate products and stuff. And I think a lot of times there's a disconnect because a lot of people aren't involved in making products. So I learned a lot as I got involved with Azure Standard on making a product line because I guess we're naive and we're optimistic and we just think that everyone has the best
Yeah.
intentions, and then you find out that's not necessarily true when you're talking to these companies, and sometimes they're not giving you what you want. But there's a lot of talk in the field when it comes to cod liver oil and having a product that is raw. So would you consider this a raw product? We don't market it that way on our website. And sometimes we've taken some flack and people say, well, it's not raw and you have to have something that has absolutely no chemicals and no heat at all. Is there a such thing? Is that a real thing or is that more marketing or what is that?
Well, from my understanding, for me, raw is a term that is strictly marketing. Now, it depends, and now I want to hear how people define what raw is. And your oil is very, very minimally processed, but there are some things that have to occur. You have to render the oil. You have to separate the oil from the protein in the liver and the water. And also, it's necessary to you have a proprietary short path distillation process, which it does expose the oil to a little bit of heat, but that gets rid of things like the volatile compounds like PCBs and stuff like that that may be in the oil in very, very low levels. So it's a very mild cleaning process that your oil goes through, but the proof is in the pudding. Your oil is tested every which way by the best labs in the world. The difference between the absolute, what we call crude oil and what you call crude oil, which is just the rendered oil, and then the mildly cleaned oil, all the nutrients are at the same level. So nothing's transformed, the fats aren't transformed. And that's just a safer way to go. You want your oil to be as clean as possible. The Bering Sea is, from my understanding, about as clean of an ocean as you can get. But still, man has impacted the planet. And, the best thing to do is get those nutrients that come naturally formed in the cod liver oil in a clean, healthy, safe form. And that's exactly what you're offering people.
Mhm. So like what we put on our label for our bottle, flash frozen for freshness. And from what I understand, it's frozen while it's on the boat before it goes anywhere, so it doesn't have a chance to degrade. And then, of course, you have to add some heat back in just to unfreeze it, thaw it out,
Yeah.
and do what you need to do, that part. And then the second thing we've got listed here is no synthetic additives. And a person might think that, well, it's cod liver oil. What could be synthetic about that? But you kind of alluded to that where, hey, when they over process something because they've got kind of bad oil to begin with things that they have to get out, they end up stripping it of their natural vitamin A and vitamin D. And so then they add synthetic back in. So what does that look like? How can we know if that's happened? For sure, we had to go to great lengths to find cod liver oil that is good enough naturally to have the appropriate levels of A and D without adding some in because it hasn't been stripped out. But tell me more about that, both of you.
Well, I could respond fairly quickly if you don't mind, Dr. Monzo.
Sure.
If you take if you analyze, say, the retinols or the vitamin A compounds in your material, and you do a graph like an HPLC analysis, there's multiple peaks, multiple. There's all different forms of retinol essentially in your product. That's the way that nature makes it. You know, that's what your body recognizes. If you do the same analysis to overprocessed cod liver oil that has synthetic vitamins added back in, you only get one peak on that graph. So it's really quite easy to identify. It's not easy testing to do. It's not inexpensive, but your oil is tested and and showing the whole array of not only vitamin A, but of natural forms of vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was gonna just add two things for the consumer real quick. When you're looking at labels, uh, obviously on the AzureWell label, they put on their naturally occurring A and D, and you can see that. The other thing you can do is sometimes look at the amounts. And I was going to see if I can bring one up, but I guess it didn't work. I don't want to sit here and look for it forever. Maybe if I find it a little bit later, I can bring it up. But a lot of times when you look on a label, it will say um, A and D naturally occurring and added, and then they will give the scientific name of the synthetic form of A and D. So you can see that on the label, and then of course you're going by the numbers. If the numbers seem really high, I mean, you look at our label and our 1200 milligram, the D is only 6 micrograms, and the retinol is 2040 micrograms. So, if you pick up a cod liver oil and the retinol is way off the charts, and the specifically the D probably is the one that will really give it away. If that's way off the charts, then you know they have to be adding synthetic in there to be getting those doses because usually there's usually about a ratio of about 10 to 1 retinol to D. But sometimes you'll pick up a cod liver oil and you look on the back and the D is just a tremendous amount. Like you might see 3, 4,000 units and it's like you were actually taking a vitamin D supplement, and then you have to know that's not naturally occurring in the fish that was added to it. So those are a little couple tricks. The only thing else you can do is really make sure you know who you're buying for or from and see if you can contact who the distributor is or who's making it and find out, okay, what is your process? Are you adding things back into this? And hopefully the company will tell you. But with the way the labeling is, not all companies have to tell you all these things. It's more like if they're willing to. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tell me more about, well, going back to the vitamin D and the retinol, is there enough vitamin A, retinol, and vitamin D in our cod liver oil to benefit someone? In other words, when people are comparing our cod liver oil with others, it looks like we don't have as much in there. Is it enough to be beneficial?
I'll give the short answer this time. Yes.
Okay.
I'll let Todd answer that. I think he has a good answer.
Hmm.
Well, the answer is yes. Any, vitamin D up to a certain level is going to help you. Your cod liver oil has the highest food source of vitamin D. And then getting back to the big Azure theme of nature identical, the healing power of nature. I'll take a smaller amount of naturally formed vitamin D or naturally formed vitamin A over a higher amount of synthetic material that the body doesn't even potentially recognize any day. So your product really kind of belongs over in the produce department or the seafood department because it's all natural. And that can only be helpful. And the levels are actually higher than any other cod liver oil that I've seen without being absurd. And, they added in the synthetic, as Dr. Monzo said.
Mhm.
So I think with about, around 4 grams, you're going to be getting 400 IU, which is the RDA or RDI. So I think the answer is a resounding yes. Now, some people in certain situations would they benefit, if people maybe have autoimmune issues or what have you, would they benefit from more vitamin D? Arguably, yes. That'd be up for a discussion with their doctor. But this is a really good daily dosage you're getting and that fits into your overall dietary pattern.
Mhm. Mhm. And Todd, you are an expert on omega-3 oils particularly. And tell us how cod liver oil and omega-3 come together. Why should a person buy, our Alaskan cod liver oil rather than just rushing out and, finding something that just says omega-3s? Um,
Sure. Yeah. That could be answered a lot of different ways, but to stay with the theme here, there's new research that's emerged that shows that highly refined oils that are really concentrated and just like a purified oil, that they can actually drive the inflammatory process because they're derivating from nature. They're going towards well into the realm of synthetic. And inflammation is something you really don't want to have. It's involved in most forms of poor health in your body. The cod liver oil not only has a really nice array of fatty acids, it has the EPA that people have probably heard of. It has DPA, which is between EPA and DHA. DPA, some people call it the missing omega-3, but your product's fairly robust in that compared to other products. Then you've got a nice amount of DHA. So you've got a good foundation of omega-3s, but then again, you're bringing in these other compounds, the highest food source of naturally formed vitamin D, the highest food source of retinoic acid, that these things work together. They're a dynamic duo for your health, for balancing immune activity and supporting all sorts of pathways in the body. Then also with your product, you have really very robust levels of not newly discovered compounds, which are called resolving mediators. They're called that because they help to resolve inflammation and promote healing in the body. So what your product, I always say, your product is a beyond omega-3. You have omega-3 and then all these other benefits. And all these ingredients that are in your cod liver oil, they work together. Synergistic, that term has been overused a bit, but quite frankly, these nutrients are all very synergistic. So I think you're going to get a much more powerful impact on improving and protecting your health with your cod liver oil versus just a standardized regular old fish oil that just has the fatty acids left in it.
mhm, mhm.
I agree. I don't think I have anything to add to that.
Okay.
That's why we love it. It's in that whole food form, and you just can't beat that. It's the idea of going back to nature and being in balance. And when you're having to rely on the synthetics or a highly processed omega oil, well, how much of that are you going to absorb, and how much of that is going to just create more inflammation? I mean, that's one of the big things we want cod liver oil for, is for inflammation. So it doesn't make sense to take an oil that's going to create more oxidative stress and more inflammation in the body. That's the opposite. So you're kind of working against yourself. Maybe you're getting a higher dose on the label, but what's the
Mhm.
downfall going to be to the body overall when you have to deal with all those other negative factors then?
So taking something is taking less of something, but with its cofactors makes it
Yes.
so that it works better in the body because it's what the body is expecting and it has everything that it needs there. That
Yeah,
makes
one of
sense.
the big researchers in Whole Foods, um, Dr. Teal, and in some of his research, he showed where I don't know if it was originally his. It might go all the way back to Royal Lee, um, who was the founder of Standard Process way back in the day and stuff. But they did testing and they found that a whole food form of nutrients is about 10 times more beneficial than the synthetic form. So, you think about that, that's like 200 milligram of whole food C compared to 2000 milligrams of ascorbic acid. So,
Mhm.
sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, well, this is only 200 and I need to be, at 2000. And it's like, well, you don't, because it's 10 times more powerful. And that's because of all the cofactors and everything else that's naturally occurring in the food that was supposed to be there. And you're not getting that in a synthetic form. So then the body has to make up that difference somehow.
Mhm. Well, on our label, we state here that it's traditionally used for heart, eye, and brain support. And we've been talking about inflammation and how it helps with that. But what are you guys' thoughts on brain, eye, and heart support? People that are needing that kind of support. Is cod liver oil something that they should seriously consider?
You want to go, Dr. Monzo?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So when you're looking at brain health, um, you need the DHA, you need the omega-3 fatty acids, not only structurally for your brain, but also to tap down on the inflammatory processes. There's cells in your brain called glial cells. They're immunological cells. And overactivity in these cells, meaning that there's too much inflammation, too much immune activity occurring. Of course, you need some immune activity, but the omega-3 fats and the vitamin D, they help to control inflammation and keep it in a balanced form so that you're not damaging your brain, basically. And then also we've got these resolving mediators in there that do the exact same thing. So we're giving omega-3 plus additional factors that are tremendously protective and beneficial for your brain. For the eye, it's just kind of a similar story. A lot of eye diseases can be based on, degeneration and stuff, which is often driven by inflammation. So you got the omega-3 fatty acids, you have the resolving mediators. And then most people know, if you want to be able to see better at night, eat your carrots. That's because of carotenoids, which are the plant form of vitamin A. So for your eyes, you're also getting the vitamin A, the really powerful wide array of vitamin A compounds that nature made to protect your eyes. And then with the heart, it's kind of all of the above. All of these different ingredients are working on multiple factors and pathways to improve your overall cardiovascular health, which includes circulatory health. The circulatory system is, I'm not going to say it's more important than the heart or less important, but it's super important. I mean, that's why the heart's pumping, is to get all these nutrients and factors flowing through your body. And the factors that you find in your cod liver oil support the health of these tissues in multiple ways. So home run.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think it can be argued that maybe one of the most detrimental practices uh, with diet currently in our country is consuming rancid oils, and especially a lot of these seed oils that are highly processed. They're causing so much damage. And at the same time, we have really been taught to shy away from healthy fats. That's kind of been the mantra for a long time, and people are starting to finally come back and realize, no, we need fat. When we think about the brain is made out of fat, and we're talking about cholesterol and how important cholesterol really is in the body. And so, we've had that drum beat for a long time that you need really, 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 really low cholesterol numbers. And it doesn't make any sense because, well, the brain's made out of cholesterol and you need cholesterol to make your hormones, and we need cholesterol for so many things. So the problem is our society is filling themselves up with all these bad oils, which then are damaging the heart and the brain and the eyes, but they're not eating the healthy oils. And a lot of times people are shying away from the healthy oils because they're concerned about it being rancid or the toxicity levels. But AzureWell has a product with this Alaskan cod liver oil that you don't have to be afraid of those things. And it's the type of oil that your body needs with all these different nutrients that actually would do the opposite of the bad oils. It actually helps the heart and the circulation in the brain. So I think that's a huge thing. I know, even Kennedy, if he gets in for the health, he's been talking about this, the seed oils, and then after that, all kinds of podcasts and people started jumping on this bandwagon and talking about these bad oils and how bad they are, and why it's so important to have really healthy ones. And I think we want to encourage people. You don't have to be afraid about cod liver oil or getting your healthy oils because a lot of people want to shy away from them because they're like, oh, you can't get any oil that's not rancid, and that's just not true. You can get now, it's probably true that there's not a whole lot of companies out there taking the time to do it the right way, but there are some, and AzureWell is one of them. And I think maybe Todd can even talk more about how the process with this oil, they take extra steps to make sure there's no oxygen getting into the product as they're actually even making it. And that's really important for people to know. So you don't have to worry about getting a bad oil here. And so now you can put something back into the diet that's like food that's really going to help.
Mhm. Yeah, the tests that we've done on this cod liver oil
Okay.
show that it is not rancid. It has all of these good benefits to it. But Todd, why and how do we get such good test results? How do we get there? How do we what is it about the oil that makes it so that ours is better than other brands that are rancid?
Well, it starts with the fish, as you and I have discussed in the past. Um, your material is sourced from very robust cod fisheries in the Bering Sea, which is in the northern Pacific, kind of by the Aleutian Islands and Alaska. Very, very clean waters. And the process really starts from the time that the fish is brought on the boat, because they're processed right away, and the liver is taken aside and put on these trays and flash frozen. So they don't break down, they don't degrade. The oxidative stress markers that is basically an indication of rotting in a sense, do not increase. It's very, very stable. It's in a very stable state. The boat goes into Dutch Harbor, Alaska. Think the deadliest catch. It's the center of the fisheries in the Bering Sea, and it's produced within days. So you have fresh, clean fish from robust stocks with the liver frozen right away, the oil made within days. You've got a really, really good oil right there. A great oil that doesn't need much tweaking to go in the bottle. And then from then on, what your responsibility is to keep that good oil good and stable and clean. So that's not exposing it to oxygen through the whole process. Whether you're making a soft gel or a liquid bottle, you have to really handle that oil well, and that's what goes into your product. So there's no corners cut. And then, as you and I have discussed many times, and Dr. Monzo just brought up, I mean, you're testing this material very, very extensively with the best labs in the world, literally the most expensive testing that can be done. But I know that, you want to make sure that your oil represents Azure, and your incredible standards of your company. And this oil definitely does that.
Well, that brings up another question that a lot of people have just about seafood in general, but if they're going to get something that's, a concentrated oil, is, which ocean it came in the world. The oceans nowadays they seem to be very polluted. And like you said, where this comes from is very good, clean waters. But tell me about the scary stuff, the PCBs, the radiation, all those things that really make people fearful to try seafood in general, but a cod liver oil specifically.
Sure. A couple of things here. AzureWell tests for over 450 potential environmental toxins. The usual suspects: lead, mercury, pesticides, that type of a thing. So you're testing every batch, and most companies don't do that because it's expensive. And most companies will say, well, 3 batches ago it was fine, so I'm sure it's fine on this batch. No, that's not good enough. So you're testing for all these compounds. And they're very, 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 if they're present, it's almost like homeopathy. It's parts per billion. So it's very, very clean from global standards. As clean as you can get. That's number one. And then the other thing is that, we've had radiation issues coming out of Japan a few years ago. The United States government and some of their agencies, and these are really dedicated people. These are top scientists. These people aren't fooling around. They take their job very seriously, because they know if they're slacking on seeing if there is radiation in the water where the American public is sourcing most of our seafood. That's where most of the seafood comes from, the Bering Sea. That we'd have a huge national catastrophe on our hands. It would basically be as if there was a nuclear activity across the United States, in a sense, delivered by seafood. So
Mhm.
it's very, very strenuously and rigorously evaluated on an ongoing basis. And fortunately, the ocean is huge and vast, and it can really dilute anything down to nothing. And fortunately, that's what's happened here. So you're testing your own material. I know that you have had conversations and, to you wanting to understand the kind of the testing that the government does. And so, yeah, you're doing everything you can, and your product is definitely as clean and pure as one can get.
Mhm.
Safe.
We're definitely trying to make it the absolute best and make it so that number one, it does no harm, and number two, that it is efficacious. And so, yeah, we are sincerely doing that. And yet it is sometimes difficult when we do find something that is superior
Mhm.
that, well, everyone still is afraid of something else because the competition or, some other thing that came out from somewhere that's not ours, and kind of have to fight against that to say, well, nope, ours is different and we can prove it because we've got this testing to show it. So we're trying to do that actually with all of our products to prove that, yeah, we're making sure that everything is tested very rigorously to make sure that it's really good.
I have another question too
Hmm.
that someone actually asked for me to ask.
Mhm.
And I kind of know some background on this, so without mentioning any names, what do you think about the idea of fermented cod liver oil? They wanted to know, why don't we offer a fermented cod liver oil? So why would you want to use fermented, or why would you not want to use fermented? I guess that's a question.
Is that a question for me or for Susan?
Yes, yes, for Todd, yeah.
Okay, I want to be careful here because I don't like to disparage, people out there. But fermented means basically that it rotted and the fat dripped out of it. And I can tell you that I've been involved in an organization that's tested that type of material in the past. And how would I say this? You probably not wouldn't necessarily want to give it to your enemy. I was going to try and be funny and use another example, but we'll just leave it at that.
Your
It's kind of
dog?
scary material. The oxidation levels are really high, and it's just not a safe. In my opinion, it's not the safe process. What you folks are doing with the minimal processing, and the testing and all that, that's the way you want to go. That's how people can be assured that, look, if you're taking a rancid fat, I don't care if it's canola oil that's rancid or a fish oil. If it's rancid, and it's going to have a deleterious effect on your health. So, you want a pure product and a clean product. So, yeah.
Well, I would go back to the piece about your grandmother's cod liver oil. Um, I believe that older cod liver oil that, Weston Price, he used it in a lot of his studies. I was reading about how he was able to help some school children at the mission with one meal a day, where he fed them like a beef stew and some tomato juice and some uh, cod liver oil, and I believe some high vitamin butter with freshly ground grain for bread. And it's in his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. But that kind of cod liver oil that he was using back then was sufficient to really boost the nutrition of these kids at this mission. And he was able to prove it with all of the studies to say this is how much nutrition is in their food. And I think that there must have been, and I can't prove it, but maybe Todd from the history it's almost like there was your grandmother's cod liver oil, and then somehow maybe we came into an era when this ultra distillation or something where they basically take everything out and then they, put the synthetic vitamin A and D back in. I think that the efficacy of the cod liver oil went down. So now people take the cod liver oil, they say, oh, this tastes bad, partly because it's rancid, and it does not have the efficacy. People don't just get well right away from it because it's, to me, I think it's something different. And the fermented cod liver oil, had come in popularity, I think, to try to get away from that super processed stuff that really wasn't working, wasn't helping people. But I think going back to the grandmother's thing, where, like we're hearing about, the very minimally processed, um, and we can test and show that it is good, it's not rancid, it has all of these elements in it that are natural. So you're right. I don't know that we need to talk about how bad something else is. If it is or it isn't, we can just point to what we have and say we know that this is good. And that to me feels like the appropriate way to look at it.
Yeah, I appreciate you kind of going back and giving a historical perspective on cod liver oil. I had a friend of mine wrote a paper on cod liver oil. It's amazing. It's basically been it's one of the oldest medicinal substances in human history. It goes back 900 years, the trade of cod liver oil. And back in the day, they saw that if you rubbed it on a wound, it helped to heal the wound more quickly. And then there's all kinds of steps when people found new things about cod liver oil. But to your point, I guess what I would say is, grandma's cod liver oil didn't particularly taste good, and it might have had, some things in there they didn't necessarily want. I think that there's got to be a happy medium. You don't want to be completely over refined because, as we've discussed, it takes some of these incredible health promoting factors out of the oil. But you do want to take the oil and it all starts with the fish. It all starts with the liver. It starts with how soon you process it, getting a really good oil. If you have to do a little bit of mild, cleaning on it, great. But your oil, I've tried it. It tastes phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And it has all the factors that come out of the liver in the lipids, untransformed in the same quantities as what I call the crude oil, which has just been rendered by adding just a little teeny bit of heat so you can separate the oil from the protein. So I think that you're right in the sweet spot. It's Goldilocks' porridge, and that's a great place to be. And it's perfect for the consumer because they're not going to have a negative experience with it, and they are getting a very, very nutrient dense, nature-made combination that's going to have a significant impact on their health.
Mm-hmm. Is there anybody that should not take cod liver oil? And maybe I should describe that differently. Is there anyone that should not take our cod liver oil? Because I think there is ample evidence that there is good reason not to take the cod liver oil that has had everything stripped out and the synthetic put back in and all this. But would there be any reason why a person shouldn't take AzureWell Alaskan cod liver oil? We've got the good stuff. What should people be watching out for? Is this going to mess up their medications if they're on medication? What are your thoughts on that?
Doctor?
Well, I would say no. It's not going to mess up anything because it's a natural occurring. And as Todd said, this is basically like a food. So we're not giving you high dose synthetic nutrients in the product. So that means you're not going to have adverse effects. It's just like eating food.
Mhm.
Now, you can always be sure, have a conversation with your doctor. Maybe, if you're on blood thinners or something, just watch it. And if you do see changes, then maybe you can go back to your doctor and say, hey, on this thing, can we reduce our medication?
Mhm.
Because if it can replace the medication, hey, that's great. I don't really expect to see that necessarily happening because I think you're at such a good dose. But you never know. When you put something really that's high quality in the body, hey, maybe your body starts functioning better and the circulatory system does get better. So then that would be when you need to go in and talk to your doctor and say, hey, can we adjust these medications because I'm on some natural now. You can take your bottle in and let them see it, and maybe they let you reduce your dose. But you can't change your medications on your own. That's not a smart idea, and you'd want to talk to your doctor about those type of things.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's good. What other questions do you think people might want answered? Or what thing do you think that we just need to have as the take-home message for people? If they said, hey, I watched this podcast on AzureWell's Alaskan cod liver oil, what do you think should be the takeaway message? And maybe Todd, will start with you. What do you think the takeaway message is for our cod liver oil?
Well, I think your cod liver oil kind of solves a lot of problems for everybody. It's considered that the two biggest deficiencies in the planet are omega-3 and vitamin D, dietary deficiencies. Your material has those in very healthy, levels, as well as everything else. So an omega-3 product that's beyond omega-3. As Dr. Monzo said, these are essential fatty acids. Your body can't necessarily synthesize them. You need to have some type of like ALA, alpha linoleic acid or something. The body can elongate that, but it's a really difficult process for the body. So having these long chain fats, these omega-3 fats in your supplement and in your diet with the cod liver oil is something that everybody just basically does. I mean, people out there have to ask themselves, how often do you eat fatty fish? I've been in rooms full of people when, maybe two people will put their hands up that they have it weekly or twice a week, which you'd really need to do to get the basic baseline level of omega-3 fatty acids. And don't underestimate omega-3 fatty acids. They're in every cell in your body.
Hmm.
They promote multiple health pathways, and they also help to calm the inflammatory process, which drives forward a lot of poor disease states. So great product. What I would encourage people to do as their foundation in their diet, of course, you want to eat well, you want to eat real natural food, skip the synthetic refined food. The real food is actually less expensive than this synthetic nonsense that has super deleterious effects on our body. I would combine it with a greens product because that's the other thing that people, I think, not universally, but largely in the population, I'm sure that Dr. Monzo would recommend you get at least 7 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Raise your hand if you do that. Hardly anybody does. So by combining your cod liver oil with the omega-3 and all the other factors in it with a really good broad greens product, people are really going to have a really superb foundation that's going to allow them to preserve their good health and actually move their health in a direction of healing and feeling robust and resilient, good immune system, less pain in the body, and better clarity of thought. Just the benefits that come out of getting those 90 nutrients that Dr. Monzo talks about in your diet, basically on a daily basis. Not enough positive could be said about that.
Mhm.
Well, I think I would just say that I've looked at uh, tons of different cod liver oils over the years, and of course, besides all the advanced testing that AzureWell does with these companies in I think it's in Germany and other places, we do energetic testing at my clinic to look at things from a frequency point of view. And there's a lot of factors in there. It gets really technical, and I don't want to try to bore people with biophysics, but you want to see what is naturally supposed to be occurring in there, which is, I would call it the software of life. There's naturally occurring frequencies and everything, and it's supposed to be in there. And you can look at a lot of the quality of things by the energy that comes off of our product. Natural foods are going to have very high energy levels, whereas something that's cooked or synthetic is going to have very low, and it's not going to be coherent. So you're looking at coherency and all these different things when you're looking at the physics of something. And this is one of the highest testing, well, it is the highest tested, uh, highest quality of any oil I've tested before. And I've tested a lot of them, and some of them were really bad, and some of them were okay, but I've never seen anything like this. And then just in the clinical use, I can say, I haven't had any problems with anyone using the Alaskan cod liver oil. It's just been phenomenal. So it's just super high quality. And of course, it is a foundational staple in the 90 essential nutrients. So as Todd was saying, I think AzureWell has a Pro Greens formula, but we also have a whole food multi. And I think it's one of the greatest whole food multis out there because when you look at it, besides it listing all the nutrients in it, at the bottom, it actually tells you the food that's made out of, and it's all just food. So it
Mhm.
has a lot of your greens and everything in there. So if you're combining the cod liver oil with the whole food multi and maybe the fulvic humeric minerals, which comes right from the soil, so you're getting your organic minerals that makes up your 90 essential nutrients, and you know that's the basic foundation. for good nutrition because we know we just can't get it quite from our food. As Todd was saying, who's going to get that many servings of greens and vegetables or even fish? I mean, even I don't get that much fish in my diet. I would like to, but sometimes it's just not possible.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Well, this is good. I think we accomplished our goal. We know now why cod liver oil is good for you, and we know why AzureWell's Alaskan cod liver oil is good for us. Do either of you have any one more comment you want to make about it?
I guess I would say that something that should be important to consumers is kind of knowing where your product comes from
Mhm.
and knowing that it's actually sustainable, knowing that it's done in an ethical way so that there's going to be more of this raw material in the future for your grandkids. The fisheries up in the Bering Sea, the cod fisheries are exceedingly well monitored by government and non-governmental organizations. Every boat that goes out has to have a monitor on it. They monitor the stock, the fish stock. So you can rest assured that not only is this product extremely efficacious or healthy, but from an ecological point of view, you're drawing from a source that's very robust and it's going to be around for a long time, and there's no negative impact of your buying choice.
Nice. That is good to know. That's important because we all want to be healthy, but we don't want to, wreck the planet and, wreck other ecology, in the process. We want to do it responsibly and sustainably. So that's a really good point. Yeah. Any last word from you, Dr. Monzo?
Okay, well, I would say, Azure Wells way is God's way. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring you things that is close to nature as God created it as possible. And I think we have done a phenomenal job with this Alaskan cod liver oil.
Mhm.
As Todd has said, I don't think you can get any cleaner or better. Maybe sometime in the future we come up with new technologies, but right now this is about as best as you can do.
Mhm. Well, I think that's fantastic. I enjoyed this. Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
pretty good.
Thank you,
Our
Thank you.
Todd.
pleasure.
Thank you,
Our
Dr.
pleasure.
Monzo. We'll get back to getting people healthy because that's where we're at. We're trying to make sure that everybody gets as healthy as possible, get their health and nutrition back in balance. And thank you for your time and for joining us today for the AzureWell podcast.